Alrighty, I think we're ready to get started. Welcome in, Internet. I am your host, James. This is a place to heal. Before we start talking about the topic for tonight, just give a second for those of you who are new. First, to welcome you to the stream, and secondly, to introduce myself. Once again, I said my name is James. I've worked in the mental health field for about 5 years. I've worked in the foster adoption system. I've worked in inpatient psych hospitals. I've seen everything from, depression, schizophrenia, bipolar, etc. And I have been in grad school to become a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm not currently licensed, but I am a relationship and self-development coach. I help people save their relationships, overcome codependency, and find and build lasting love. So today, what I figured we'd talk about, we haven't talked about before, is emotional immaturity. So maybe you've got some people that you know in your life that you would describe as politely as possible as a stubborn ass. Those people are very highly likely to be what's known as emotionally immature. So what we'll be talking about today is exactly what is immaturity, what are the signs and symptoms of emotional immaturity, and if I know someone in my life who's emotionally immature, whether it's family members, friends, maybe even someone you're in a relationship with, or even yourself. What can you do about it? So a lot of the things that we'll be talking about were researched very heavily by a psychologist by the name of Lindsay Gibson. We'll talk all about her later tonight, and have a couple of book recommendations because I like to give people homework every stream. So without further ado, let's go ahead and pop over and introduce the topic here. Let me pop over to our browser here. Alrighty, so let's start off and talk about at a 10,000 foot view here in a really short, succinct way. When we talk about emotional immaturity, most often you'll hear about it on the internet talked about in two ways. Either emotional immaturity, I should say emotionally immature parents. So you might have a parent that's emotionally immature. All sorts of advice on there on how to handle that. It's kind of a difficult thing when a family member is emotionally immature, but especially if it's your parent. And also someone you're in a relationship with. So what do you do if your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever gender they may identify as, is emotionally immature? How do you handle that? Let me tell you, it can be a pain in the ass to deal with, to be frank. So let's watch two short videos here just to kind of kickstart the topic, give people an idea of what we're talking about, and then we'll kind of go over it more carefully and spend a little bit of time dissecting emotional immaturity here and what you can do about it. So I have a couple of videos by the holistic psychologist. She is awesome, by the way. I want to give a quick shout out to her. She's a psychologist. Just came out with a new book recently. I think it's How to Be the Love You Seek. So great. It's on my reading list. I haven't actually done it. Haven't read it yet, but her stuff is cool. Feel free to check her out on YouTube, Instagram. I think she's got a TikTok as well. Big fan. So shout out to her by all means. Okay, so what does it look like if you're dealing with an emotionally immature parent? Might look something like this.
I'm an emotionally immature parent. In a couple minutes, I'm going to disagree with you, and I'll get emotionally explosive. I'll say things like, I can't take this anymore. All I've done for you, I put you through college and you're ungrateful. You're going to give me a heart attack. My nervous system is stuck in fight or flight, so this is the only way that I know how to react. I'm familiar with the script. I've heard it all my life. Yeah, I overwhelm you, and you often give up or just yes me to shut me up or calm me down. I get really emotionally flooded, and I start going into pleaser mode because I'm so overwhelmed. But the thing is, I've been working to become more emotionally healthy. So now when you go into your emotionally explosive mode, I can respond in new ways. What new ways? Well, when you dominate the conversation and get really loud, I can remind myself that you're trying to intimidate me and control me, and it's not my fault that you can't manage your emotions. My inner child will get overwhelmed, but instead of reacting in childlike ways, I can remind myself that we're both adults now. And because we're both adults, I'm capable of disagreeing with you and having my own opinion. When you have unrealistic expectations, as you often do, I can remind myself that my role in life isn't to meet those expectations and that you are fully capable of dealing with disappointment. When you try to blame me for things that I haven't actually done wrong, I'll no longer defend myself. I also don't need to feel guilt or like I need to make you feel better because I'm no longer a child. I can't expect you to change, but I can definitely change the way I respond to you.
So yeah, something like that. If your parents do anything like that, and I personally know some people who constantly come to me and talk about how their parents do just that. So your parents might be emotionally immature. What does it look like if it's a partner, though? Might look a little bit something like this.
Right now, I'm showing you my best side because we just started dating. But in a few months, I'll start getting really defensive and deflecting anytime you talk about how you feel.
Okay.
I know what that feels
You'll
like.
always be left feeling frustrated and shut down and dismissed. It'll become a cycle.
But things have been going so well. We've been having so much fun together.
I know, when things are good, it's easy. But whenever we have issues, I'll avoid responsibility to feel less guilt. So I'll blame you for everything, and you'll start to question your sanity.
Hey, can we please grab the check? You might want to read this book.
That's a new book, by the way. Oops. Zoom past it already.
Right now.
So yeah, that is what emotional immaturity looks like at a nutshell. So we'll kind of go through. I've got my cute little Instagram post that I like to try to make to summarize the things that we've talked about in our throughout the course of our streams here. Actually, I need to update the list. This list is not correct here, but we'll kind of go through all of the major signs and symptoms here. Here, let me pop over really quick. Where's our list at? I gotta find this thing here. There we go. I have too many scenes, y'all. So, at a 10,000 foot view, this is not the correct list. We'll be updating here as we go along here. Let's do it together here. So, number one is signs and symptoms of emotional immaturity in people that you may know: difficulty handling conflict, difficulty taking responsibility and accountability. Jesus, I know what it feels like to date someone like that. Oops. God, I hate when I move stuff. Self-centeredness or a lack of empathy for others. Someone who frequently has emotional outbursts and hostility. Someone who frequently seeks immediate gratification or has difficulty with impulse control. Someone who displays a tendency to be deceptive or manipulative. Someone who has a fear of vulnerability. And that's why they're typically really defensive and quick to anger, right? Because they fear being vulnerable. Excessive need for validation. Rigid beliefs, aka a lot of black and white thinking. So they see someone as either all good or all bad, and they frequently flip between the two. It's a process called splitting. And just someone who's generally resistant to growth. They think they know it all. And because of this, they can often have times difficulty maintaining relationships. So if you know someone's just kind of a stubborn ass, is frequently getting to arguments with people, has a trail of broken relationships, whether it's family relationships or romantic or friendships, this person's very highly likely emotionally immature. So what is emotional immaturity? Let's take a look on Google here for a good definition. So emotional immaturity is the tendency to express emotions in an unrestrained or disproportionate way to the situation. People who are emotionally immature may have difficulty communicating their emotions, relating to others, and navigating reality. So we've seen some signs already, but they're selfish, they lack empathy, they lack the ability to take accountability and self-reflect. Difficulty just seeing reality aside from the way they view it, right? They have a hard time perspective taking. They're impulsive. They have difficulty maintaining relationships again, and they have a lack of guilt or remorse for the things they do. So they might treat you like shit and then feel completely self-righteous and like it was totally warranted and you're evil and they're God's gift to humanity and all that sort of thing. Lord, I know I've had some of those people in my life, unfortunately. So, to dive deeper into this a little bit, let's go into our next video here. And by the way, so we'll be working on our signs of emotional immaturity Instagram post. I post on Instagram very frequently, as like I mentioned before, I'm a relationship and self-development coach. Currently, we are mere weeks away from the launch of my Mastering Relationships program. So for those of you who are interested in that, feel free to follow me on Instagram. DM me about it if you're stuck in a toxic relationship with someone who might be emotionally immature. Or you had a breakup that you're going through, you're trying to rescue the relationship. That is my area of speciality. So feel free to follow me on my socials. You'll find all the links here. Let me go ahead and add socials here. Oops. Helps if you can spell. My spelling ability is just as bad as in work also. So check out my Instagram. We also have a Place to Heal official Discord server. So inside of which you'll meet a community of people interested in mental health. We talk about mental health. We support each other on our mental health journey. Lots of cool self-development memes and stuff in there. And also, we're starting a book club here this month. So if you like to talk about mental health, if you are into music or games or other nerdy things, if you just want a place to hang out and feel accepted, even if you're going through some stuff, feel free to join the Place to Heal official Discord server. Got to work on the TikTok and Twitter, though. Might get rid of Twitter because I feel like I just don't use it. I use Threads a lot more than I use Twitter. I think Twitter's dying. Sorry, Elon. Okay, let's go ahead and dive into our next video here, and we'll kind of talk through it. And then we'll definitely play some games later on tonight. So we'll continue our deep dive into emotional immaturity. Then after usually about an hour and a half in, we'll go ahead and play some games.
Welcome to my scientifically informed insider look at
Nope. This is what happens when I watch everything on like 2x speed, y'all, because I have no impulse control myself. But I swear I'm not emotionally immature.
Welcome to my scientifically informed insider look at mental health topics. If you find this video to be interesting or helpful, please...
Brief intro. This is Dr. Todd Grand. He's awesome. He's all over YouTube. He's got a huge, gigantic following. So by all means, drop him a sub. He does an excellent job of breaking down sophisticated mental health topics in a way that's very, I would say it's like palatable to the average person without lacking any of the, sophistication. So I think he does a really good job of kind of taking it to the level of like, ooh, I really feel like I'm getting some real good information here. But it's not like reading a dictionary,
Please like it and subscribe to my channel.
Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks if I can review the signs of emotional immaturity. And another question here is emotional immaturity a mental disorder? So answer this question by looking at the 10 signs that you are emotionally immature, and I'll answer the other question about the mental disorder toward the end of the video. So before I take a look at what it means to be emotionally immature, let's take a look at what it means to be emotionally mature. So emotional maturity is when somebody develops a balance between their intellect and external reality. Sometimes this is just referred to as integrity. This allows somebody to understand reality and craft a response to a situation without being influenced by either positive or negative emotions. There are, of course, other types of maturity. Just like emotional maturity, some of them are really not that well defined. One of the constructs that is relatively well defined would be physical maturity. It's fairly straightforward. It involves biological and structural development. Moving to one that's not so well defined, we see social maturity. This is when someone is open to challenging the values of their parents and beginning the development of their own ideals and ethics. So they're really discovering who they are as an individual, resolving identity issues. This doesn't necessarily mean a rejection of parental values, just a willingness to question them. Now, personality maturity is a little bit better defined than social maturity. We see here with personality maturity, this is how stable one's personality profile is. And usually this is measured by looking at the rank order of the big 5 personality traits. We call this the 5-factor model of personality theory. I remember the 5 factors through the acronym OCEAN: openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. The emotional stability component of emotional maturity is actually measured by one of the 5-factor model traits, neuroticism. And the other traits capture different aspects of emotional maturity as well.
So he's kind of just setting the scene a little bit here, and I know he did just drop a lot of psych terms here, so to decipher a little bit, he's kind of just talking a little bit about what's called the Big 5 personality scale. So there are all different types of ways of quantifying or categorizing a person's personality. He's kind of tying the link here between one of the traits of the Big 5 personality scale, which is neuroticism, which is how emotionally unstable someone is, with emotional immaturity. He's not saying they're necessarily the same thing, but he's saying, people who are emotionally immature also tend to be more neurotic by nature.
Higher personality maturity is an indicator of higher emotional and social maturity. So there's a bit of overlap between these constructs. The concept of emotional intelligence overlaps with emotional maturity as well. So now moving to the 10 signs that you are emotionally immature. So,
and he brings up a great point here. I would say emotional intelligence. All right, I would say that emotional immaturity is the opposite of emotional intelligence, right? So if you think of emotional intelligence, so let's do a little bit of a deep dive here on emotional intelligence really quickly. So emotional intelligence, sometimes called EQ, is the ability to understand, use, and manage your emotions in a way that helps you relate to others and succeed in life. People with high EQ are often empathetic, perceptive, and have good self-control. They can use their emotional awareness to guide their thinking and behavior and to adapt to different situations. So these are people that are just generally well-adjusted, right? They have good social skills, they have good self-awareness, good self-regulation, good empathy, and are generally just motivated, put together individuals. Those are the 5 parts that researchers have decided are the core parts of emotional immaturity. I got one over here that's 4: self-awareness, social awareness, self-management, relationship management. Cool, I like it. So if someone who is very good at all those things is emotionally mature, or emotionally intelligent, they're emotionally mature. Someone who's very bad at all those things is emotionally immature. So let's continue talking about what emotional immaturity looks like. Someone who's bad at those things.
just because somebody has one or more of these signs doesn't mean they're emotionally immature for certain. These signs are just associated with being emotionally immature. Now, when the signs clearly line up with a personality trait, I'll indicate that as I go through these signs. So sign number 1 of emotional immaturity is a lack of empathy. This is measured typically on conscientiousness and agreeableness. Empathy is when somebody can cognitively understand how somebody else is feeling emotionally, and they can communicate that understanding to that person. Somebody who's emotionally immature either doesn't have this ability, so they don't have the ability to empathize, period, or they don't want to use the ability. Sign number 2 is overreaction to life circumstances. So a tendency.
And I want to stop on number 1 there. I think he brings up a good point that people who are emotionally immature, he said, has a lack of empathy. They tend to, I'm going to word that my own way, as they tend to have a hard time taking the perspectives of others and appreciating the perspectives of others. So they see the world in their way, and that's just reality to them. They don't realize that every human being has like their own version of reality that they're seeing. And so if you get into a fight with mom or dad or brother or sister, or, you know, with your girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife, whatever, to them, it's just like, no, you did this. You're bad. I'm defending myself. I'm the victim. You're the perpetrator. And that's just black and white reality to them. That's why black and white thinking was one of our signs of emotional immaturity on our little cheat sheet, right? Emotionally immature people have a really hard time of putting themselves in other people's shoes and realizing, oh, wait, to this person, I'm the bad guy. You know, to this person, I hurt them. I feel hurt right now, but to them, they feel like I hurt them. They have a really hard time of this. Certainly, especially when they're upset and they're triggered. But even when they're not, they're just generally like really bad at it.
To move toward chaos. This can also be thought of as an external locus of control. This is when somebody doesn't believe that they have any effectiveness in their own life. They believe they are really moved about by external circumstances. So kind of just blowing in the wind. They don't have any energy or propulsion of their own. So at this type of behavior, somebody's acting on their emotions. This is a type of impulsivity, typically measured on conscientiousness. Sign number 3 is failing to take responsibility and blaming others, usually thought of as part of conscientiousness.
Yeah, so frequently blaming others is another thing, right? Because in their mind, they have their perspective that they're the victim and they're perfect and you're an evil monster. They're going to have a really hard time taking responsibility for their own actions, especially when they're not showing up very well in relation to others, right? And so a lot of the times this comes from like a really deep-rooted insecurity or even like a really deep internal shame wound. They have all these feelings of shame or insecurity inside of them, and it's just too freaking painful to admit that they're not perfect, they need to think they're perfect, or the shame and insecurity that's triggered by that is just overwhelming to them. So that's often why they have a really hard time taking responsibility.
Somebody here is unable to differentiate their responsibilities from other people's responsibilities. So a person here may say, really, that no matter what happens, it's not their fault. So if they had a part in doing something wrong, or they were totally responsible, either way, they don't have any ownership of it at all.
Yeah,
this is really one level of emotional immaturity. To move it to a more intense expression, we would see this failure to take ownership and blaming somebody else. Much of the time when we see someone who's emotionally immature, these two actions occur one right after the other. So they fail to take responsibility and immediately look for other people that they can blame. Sign number 4.
So what this is commonly called in therapy speak is blame shifting. So if you bring up to a family member, a friend, a loved one, partner you're in a relationship with, hey, you did this, or if you just say, hey, I felt, let's use good communication skills here, I felt hurt when you did this to me, and they immediately turn it around on you and go, what are you talking about? I didn't do that. Actually, you did that. Are you just trying to blame? Are you just looking for things to complain about? Why are you so sensitive? That's blame shifting. Like he mentioned, people who struggle with taking accountability will quickly become defensive and then point the finger at you, right? Again, because their shame wounds and their insecurity gets triggered and all that stuff, Yo, what's up, Flame? How goes it? Putting cute emotes in the chat for you. There you go. Struggling with my own emotes, y'all. How's your night going, man? We are talking about emotional immaturity. So if you have anyone in your family, like whether it's parents or even friends, or I hope it's not your wife, but who's sometimes just really defensive and you think of them as kind of a stubborn ass, they might be dealing with some emotional immaturity. I had a tooth pulled out today. Oh, Jesus. That sounds not fun. So are you like super hopped up on Novocaine right now? Did they put you out, or did they just numb the area locally? Let's see where we're at. Let's keep diving back in.
4 is always going for immediate gratification. So we see here really a failure to plan ahead. This is also a type of impulsivity, but this...
Yeah, and so emotionally immature people just generally, not only are they kind of difficult in relationships, but they also just have this general tendency to be really impulsive. They're just very short-term gratification. Like, it feels good, I'm going to do it. Because they're just generally kind of immature, right? So the impulsiveness and seeking instant gratification is another common
type
one.
is measured on neuroticism. This is the inability to resist temptation. Another effect we see associated with this is if somebody's financially irresponsible. I've seen many examples of this in my clinical experience. A common situation where we see this type of behavior is when somebody wants to buy a particular product intended for recreation, like a video game, and they would be willing to pay $50 to a friend who could sell them that game right now, when they could wait a few weeks and get it from another friend for $10. Another indication using the same example would be if the friend that the person was going to buy the game from at the last minute raised the price to $100. The emotionally immature person would just pay the $100, right? So now there's a difference between $100.
Y'all, I'm not emotionally mature, but I feel called out right now. I'm just saying, my impulse control when it comes to buying video games is not the best. Financially, I got some work to do. My relationship skills with others are pretty on point, but financial skills have maybe a little bit, need to tighten my belt a little bit. We'll talk about it.
And $10, right? A $90 difference, it doesn't matter. They want it right now. Immediate gratification. Sign number 5 is self-centeredness. Now, one could think about self-centeredness as being an unwillingness to allow others to meet their needs at the expense of your own wants.
Yeah,
now, sometimes being
selfish.
self-centered aids in survival. Sometimes it's necessary. But that's not what I'm really talking about here. Rather, I'm talking about situations where people would really lose little or nothing by helping somebody else, but they can't see past their own desires. Whenever they're confronted with a situation, they ask themselves, how does this affect me? and they never ask themselves, how does this affect others?
I would say that's like a really big red flag that someone's emotionally immature. If you're like in a social situation, like maybe it's a party and it's one of your friends or whatever, and they're just like super freaking selfish and just can't think of how the stuff they do affects other people, that's like a pretty telltale sign. Again, they just have a really hard time taking this perspective of other people.